Hello and welcome everybody to a quick and dirty team rundown of my Roc Cup 2024 Silver Age win. In this video I'm just going to go over the build that I had and then get to roll 20 to talk about some of the positioning and plays that I had with this team. As most of you know, I'm a big fan of running my Tri-Sentinels, so this was no exception. Even with the 400 silver format and the 200 silver floor, we made sure we could run as many Tri-Sentinels as possible. Leading up to this tournament, myself and Easton Brock made some adjustments to the team as he wanted to know what I was playing. I told him I was playing Tri-Sentinels and he said, "That sounds like fun, I'll play that too." Then several months later, we finally ended up on this rendition of the build, which we both felt was the strongest team for the format without any exception. I'm glad to see that we were both correct. Jumping into the build, it's pretty easy to tell that we are obviously Mystical, Blackheart and Blackheart, Iron Inquisitor, Mad Jim Jaspers, Triple Tri-Sentinel, Double Scott Porter, Wendigo, and Daredevil. Looking back on some of the decisions we made, Wendigo is really only there to make that 200 point threshold for Silver Age. I'm not a really big fan of him on this team. I don't feel like he fits, and he really didn't do anything for me on the day. It's also the same reason why Blackheart starts with the Power Gem instead of the Trick Arrow equipment. The Power Gem is just for the Silver Age floor. When playing a similar build in Columbus the month prior, I used the Power Gem about half the time, but during the Roc Cup I only ever used the Trick Arrow equipment on Blackheart as it was just too powerful for what this team did. Rare Blackheart we outfitted with the Spin Ring and the Zero Ring. These two rings vastly helped the tempo and momentum of the team, something I'll go over here in a little bit. The addition of Iron Inquisitor was monumental for this team's success, primarily due to access to the Shield team ability, but also the Perplex that grants prob to friendly characters. This could be Blackheart or Tri-Sentinel. Either way, it was super useful all the time. I said it a lot over the weekend and in some interviews, but I think Mad Jim Jaspers is the best figure in Silver Age. I don't think there's any character that can top his utility and what he offers. I would not be surprised if we see him banned in the format after this year. I can go into depth and talk about Tri-Sentinels all day long, but in reality, these guys are just insane in my eyes. I've always thought they're awesome, they're fun, they're my favorite figure in HeroClix, and they deal free damage without attacking. Their Pulse Wave Retaliation is one of the best in the game, and with the addition of Amut's Tomb, they've become one of the best characters in the format. I personally believe that Tri-Sentinels are not the problem with Silver Age. The problem is Search for Amut's Tomb and Mad Jim Jaspers, so I really hope that the Silver Age team does not ban the Tri-Sentinel, as in 2023 there were only 4 in the field and I was playing 4 of them, so obviously people weren't too afraid then. I believe this year there were 11 people playing Tri-Sentinels and 22 in the field, so the number definitely jumped up quite a bit, but we only saw success with a select few people playing them. The Scott Porters here really speak for themselves. As we've talked about in previous videos, the utility they provide to teams for 50 points is insane. And then like I mentioned, Wendigo doesn't really fit, and Daredevil was there just because we needed the last 10 points. He's also a wild card which helped with the Shield TA. For our sideline we have Amut's Tomb, Chthon, which always went on Super Rare Blackheart, Ghost Goblin, Black Skull, and Killmonger for options for Inquisitor, the Trick Arrow equipment which always went on Super Rare Blackheart, Influence Ring which we can get into here in a little bit but was super useful, and the Emotional Modifier, which was an equipment I don't think I used a single time, but I also never faced a Legacy Thanos, and that was the main reason why I was on the build. For maps, I had Morlock Tunnels, Daily Bugle Press Room, and Wayne Manor Grounds. Morlock Tunnels was for every single matchup where I was forced to pick map, except for versus Legacy Thanos, which is why Wayne Manor Grounds was there. This never happened as I never faced a Legacy Thanos, so the only maps I ever played on was Morlock Tunnels or the map that my opponent chose. For objects, I had the nifty traffic barrel, and then I ended up having to have a machine and a dirt wall as my terrain, as I could not find my second machine marker, but ideally you would use a second machine. For the tarot deck, we chose the Magician, which allows us to force retaliation on our opponents, 8 of Cups because we have so many Colossals and succeeding on willpower is really important, 9 of Pentacles because 3 square sidestep with Tri-Sentinel is insane, 3 of Swords because 2 damage Pulse Wave with Tri-Sentinels is insane, and the 2 of Wands, which ended up being one of the most clutch cards in my entire deck, as giving all hit characters Battle Fury shut down a lot of teams and a lot of strategies. This team is absolutely bonkers. I never went to time a single time. I wiped every single one of my opponents, and most of the time it was in 1 to 3 turns. I play very fast, I play very loose when I play HeroClix, and this team complemented my playstyle beautifully. Let's jump over to roll 20 and talk about some of the positioning. and then we can get out of here. I'm not going to get into the nuance of every single map and every single opponent to talk about how this team is played, because it does vary slightly based on the matchups, like any other game in HeroClix. But what I will do is show you the main setup on Morlock Tunnels, which is the map that I would choose if I was forced to choose map. I want to be perfectly clear about something. This team functions properly when you win map or when you lose map. It does not matter. It has so much offense, so much barrier, so many abilities to turn up a Mutt's Tomb. It could be a wide open map with 0 squares of barrier, and I would still get a Mutt's Tomb to 8 turn 2. So I highly recommend you do not underestimate this team under any circumstances. Beginning of the game, Blackshirt Porter would typically select Wildcard so that he could copy Shield. Having 3 wildcards on the team in Daredevil, Blackshirt Porter, and Whiteshirt Porter means that we had triple shield access for Blackheart. What this did is it enabled me to place my fire marker 8 squares away, placing characters further down, and enabling full map reach with several characters every single game without question. 4 square TK was made for a reason because of reach, and Blackheart just being able to send characters 8 squares down the map willy-nilly is pretty bonkers. I would highly recommend WizKids looks into Blackheart. Even though he's a rare, he's the best figure from Wheels of Vengeance, and it definitely shows. For my setup, turn 1, I typically always turned up a Mutt's Tomb as fast as I could and baited a Tri-Sentinel. Effectively what this was a sidestep and a move action with the top Tri-Sentinel, and then another sidestep and a move action with the bottom Tri-Sentinel. Because this is 2 different actions, this would set a Mutt's Tomb to 4. Then, if I needed to bait the Tri-Sentinel, I would move through these 2 squares, taking a path something like this, ending here. This blocks the hole with the Tri-Sentinel, and then I would quadruple perplex his defense, usually with Jim, Scott, and Inquisitor. This gives him +4 defense if they ever wanted to lower it for any reason, and a probability control usage. He then could sidestep through this square here, turning a Mutt's Tomb up to 6. So with 3 costed actions, I was at a Mutt's Tomb with 6, allowing me to get it to 8 very quickly if needed, either this turn or next turn. Because I'd be going second on Morlock Tunnels most of the time, I typically played defensive, and what I would do is I would barrier up the entire front row. You can do this pretty simply by having Mad Jim barrier costed here, free barrier here, the 0 ring on Blackheart could free barrier there, and then costed barrier on Blackheart, like so. It's not a perfect system, as it doesn't get all the way across, but it's pretty dang close. And this is only with 5 costed actions, so it's pretty easy to still set up for the following turn. If you didn't feel like you needed to barrier up, then all you have to do is take a costed action with Blackheart. What this does with Chthon on him is puts him to click 2. That way next turn if you fail your leadership 2 turns in a row, you could still take a costed action, force your guard, and then do the KO, guard, heal a click, remove action tokens, and attack trick. I did this in almost every single game I played, and it was incredibly effective. You also want to make sure you have 3 shield TAs next to Blackheart, so typically what I would do is sidestep like this, and now I have 3 shield TA accesses. This also allows me to get out of Inquisitor for Killmonger or another character if necessary. On the alpha turn, when I have a +3 range, I would just go ahead and place it somewhere in row 10, place with Blackheart, taking along other Blackheart or Scott or Inquisitor, whoever, or even a Tri-Sentinel if I didn't move forward with this Tri-Sentinel. From there, if I spawned a guard with leadership, I could running shot down, shoot something, and then running shot again, or I could just take a move, push to click 3 with Chthon, KO the guard, and do what I need to do. My primary targets were always characters with the Mystics TA, but if Magician was out, it would be anything I wouldn't inherently kill. With my Trick Arrow equipment, I would choose different cards every game, but typically it was some combination of Acid, Too Dangerous, and Big. And then once I was able to get into the fray and start attacking, the Tri-Sentinels could start retaliating. When the Tri-Sentinels retaliate, they destroy all blocking terrain within 3 squares. Anytime a Tri-Sentinel destroys blocking, it deals 1 penetrating damage to any character that was adjacent to the square that was destroyed. Because a Mutt's Tomb would be at 6 on its counters, this damage was increased by 1. What effectively this allowed me to do was create debris map-wide on almost every single map that I played on, and then increase my damage output tenfold. You can just see by me placing this many markers how quickly debris can spread on this map, and then what I would do is after I would retaliate, I would move through a square, and then sidestep again through another square, amplifying my damage. One Tri-Sentinel could very easily get upwards of 9 damage onto a team, just with 1 or maybe even 2 costed actions. I also had the Influence Ring on my sideline, so if I wanted to, I could take a power action with Mad Jim Jaspers to assign the Tri-Sentinel the Influence Ring, which gave him Pulse Wave during the Force Blast, and allowed him to free Force Blast a character into a wall afterwards. The knockback from the Influence Ring does not trigger the extra damage on a Mutt's Tomb, but it's still 1 damage nonetheless, and super useful. Because I was playing 3 Tri-Sentinels on maps like Morlock Tunnels, it's very hard to almost impossible to kill all 3 Sentinels at the same time, so this basically guarantees I get to retaliate at least once per game. Having the 0 ring on rare Blackheart, and the free barrier from Mad Jim, and the ability to make a stop sign from White Shirt Porter, meant that no matter what, I could get barrier next to you, and then destroy it with Tri-Sentinels. This is why I don't mind playing on an open map. I always had the ability to get barrier next to my opponents. This team forces opponents to think differently than they normally think. Teams like to group hug, they like to barrier in, they like to play defensive. You cannot do that versus this team. The 2 dangerous Trick Arrow, paired with the Tri-Sentinels being able to destroy your blocking and deal damage for doing so, meant the teams had to spread out. But players are so used to group hugging and building their formation that they never did that. This essentially allowed me to steamroll every opponent I played against. There were some closer games than others, but for the most part, every single game I was able to wipe without much issue. Post video editing, Lucas here. One thing I forgot to mention was the inclusion of the spin ring, and that's just because I don't have my sideline listed here. With the spin ring, one thing you can do with Blackheart is obviously you can put Tri-Sentinels into position for your team. So assuming Scott and Daredevil are not here, you could spin ring a Tri-Sentinel forward to get that extra reach. But another thing you can do is you can place over with Blackheart, taking the other Blackheart, spin ring him forward 1 square and then TK him 4 squares. This allowed you to do a charge or a running shot to the back line and then be able to do another action afterwards. If you can get the charge flurry off right away, this made Blackheart be able to take up to 4 actions in a turn pretty simply, and it was super powerful. It also won me several games, and I just completely forgot to mention it. So I wanted to include that here real quick. This is a very quick and dirty rundown of how this team functions, but as you can imagine after the Roc Cup, I am very tired. So I hope it made sense. If you have any questions on how to play it, please feel free to ask in the comments or message me anytime on Facebook or Discord. But I have a feeling that some of these elements are not going to be allowed for much longer. So play it while you can, I guess. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed, and have a wonderful day.